Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Wade. I'll be hosting today's webinar. So thank you guys all for joining us. This is our third ENFOS Expert webinar, where we go a bit deeper into ENFOS functionality just to help refresh and improve your proficiency. So today we have Torrie Behrens, Senior Implementation Manager at ENFOS, taking us through the reporting module. So before I give it to Torrie, I just want to let you know that you should be able to submit questions all throughout the webinar through the questions tab on your dashboard. And we're going to try and save about 10 minutes for answers at the end. And with that, I'll hand it over to Torrie.
Yeah, hi Chris, thank you. I would just add to Chris's note there with the questions and answers. We do have a group here answering questions along the webinar. And we cannot hear you guys talk since we have so many attendees. It's audio only for the ENFOS group. And so any questions, any problems, just send a note over on the chat. And then you can also minimize that panel by using the red arrow. And then you can move that little panel around. So today's webinar, we're going to be discussing the reporting module, basic and advanced functionality. We're going to show you the tools available to identify which reports you need, how to filter and customize those reports, save them to run quickly, and schedule reports to run automatically. That can be emailed to you or other people, and those other people could even be non-ENFOS users. We can report out almost anything in ENFOS in bulk. In this session, we're going to show examples and share use cases for site and financial reports. And of course, the use cases are limitless, right? So you will have lots of ideas as we go through this. We've built tools within the interface which allow you guys and our clients to have a high level of configurability on the output. Everything I'm showing today is controlled by permissions, access, and report criteria. And my advice for all the users is to run reports at a low level first, a single AOC or a project. Confirm you're getting results you want, and then scale it up for your whole portfolio. Okay, so let's get into ENFOS and the reporting module. I'm going to be using a test system here, and this test system has fake data on it, and that's what we're going to be using. Remember, again, I have full permissions. So if you're not seeing something here, send a note over to your ENFOS administrator. That person's contact information is shown on the login page, and you can always contact them with more questions. Okay. I always like to start our webinars on where to get help first, and this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you have to drop off or if there's someone on your team who's not available today to join the webinar, this will be recorded. It's going to be emailed out to the group who registered for the webinar. And it's also going to be listed in this tutorial video section, as well as all of our past webinars and any other training videos. They're all listed here. There are links on YouTube. You can sit and relive this moment. We also have a lot of help content, and our team is building out the help content day by day. And so if you click this question mark box on any screen in ENFOS, you're going to get a pop-up window. And that is our help content. And you can search this for reporting or any other help question you have. Now, I just typed in report. You can see we have a lot of report help screens. If I want to look at my report favorites, I click the link, and there's step-by-step instructions, including screenshots, which are going to give you a lot of details on how to do these items. Today we're discussing global information. And if you guys want specific instructions on how it's best for your company to use it or your clients, contact them. They're going to be able to help fill in the blanks. Everything you see here is controlled by permissions. We talked about that. So if you're not seeing what I'm showing, be sure to request additional permissions from your administrator. And one more thing that will be more clear as we go into the reports, but our report names are customizable by client. So if I'm showing a report maybe called the purchase order summary report, on your screen it might be called something different. Work order summary, contract release summary, work authorization summary. So same thing, since each client can define their report name, you might see slight differences. Those reports can also be turned on and off. So you may have a report that's completely off. Admins, you keep that in mind since you do have those full permissions. If you're not seeing a report, it could be that it's turned off. And right, we talked about the recording of today's webinar. Anytime, and anyone who's ever done my reporting training has heard me say the best place to start and the easiest place to start any reporting is on this left panel. And we have a link here for advanced search. And I love this advanced search. I think it's the easiest and most straightforward reporting in ENFOS. So anyone new to reporting, this is where I would suggest you start. This advanced search has a first drop-down menu, and these drop-down menus really mimic the modules in ENFOS. You know, so if you're looking for a site list, you can select site. If you're searching for something within financials, you can select finance, and so on. So it's really straightforward. Now, what's nice about this search is that it's all on one page. As we move deeper into reporting, you'll see there's a lot of more powerful tools, and they just take a little bit more to use. But this page is all on one page. So I've selected to do site. And, you know, my question here would be, how many sites do I have in the state of Michigan? So I've selected site. I'm going to type in Michigan, and I'm going to click search. And when I do that search, I get my results lower in the page. You can see I have 601 sites in Michigan. I can download this list. I can use my pages to scroll to different pages in the output. And I can use any of these hyperlinks to redirect me directly to that link. Right? So it's a really simple, straightforward report. It does not give me a ton of details, but it does let me, filter some of the information. I could go one step further, and if I wanted to look at my active sites in Michigan, I can choose my, other filters shown on this page. Environmental status active, and click search. Still in Michigan, and that took my list from 601 down to 89. All right. A few more features within advanced search. Under finance, we have sub-options, right, for each one of these sub-modules within the financial section. This is a little bit more powerful. What's great about this search, especially on the planning page, is there are some additional download options. So when we click download for our results, we get a few additional options compared to what we would see on some other pages. But again, same format, everything is here and on one place. Now, there's something great about this advanced search. We have a link. Let me go back there. Finance, and we'll go to invoice. We have a checkbox here at the top, and it's on almost all the pages. And it says search within the current hierarchy node and below. And what that's going to do is use your hierarchy path shown at the top of your page and only search for results in that hierarchy path. So if I say I only want to see invoices at my AOC 409, I can click just that checkbox and click search. You can see I get 145 results. Let's do that same search, but maybe approved since January 1st, 2017. That takes me down to 13. right? So same thing, I can download, I may have some actions here, I have some links. One other note on the advanced search page, our document search. And we talked about this in our document webinar, which was one of our previous expert webinars. If you missed that one, I would highly recommend going back and clicking the link. But this document search actually searches content within our documents in ENFOS. So this one is more powerful. The results shown on this screen, we cannot reproduce necessarily in the other reporting screen. So be sure to take a note that this document search is a very powerful tool. All right, let's go into our standard reporting in ENFOS. Reporting is considered one of the core modules in ENFOS, and it's available to all of our ENFOS subscribers. We are going to be focusing here under the site reporting primary module. ENFOS has about 90 standard reports in ENFOS for all of our modules within the screen. We have, I'm going to click the first link, Run Report. And we've got 4 sections within reporting, 4 steps to run a report. We define where we want to run the report. We decide which report we want to use. When we pick a report, we see the columns in that report. We have an optional customization or criteria. And then finally, we have the output. So those 4 steps are what's required to run a report. I want to start kind of with the end in mind here. And I want to show everyone on the screens, you know, how easy it is. Once you do a one-time setup, you save a report as a favorite, and you can run that report very quickly. So back under reporting, I'm going to look at my report. And our first section is our report favorites. And these are all reports that I've saved over the years and over the weeks and months that are my favorites. And I can quickly run these reports instead of going through those 4 steps that we talked about earlier. I can always edit these. I can delete these. And this is the basis that we're going to use to share the report. I'm going to run my site list report. And all I'm going to do is click my action run. And ENFOS is running my report. We're going to be running quite a few reports today in screen, so they may take a little time to run. But when I run that report, I get everything I predefined here. I get a report, I get my columns, I get my report criteria, I get everything I was looking for in my output. So it's quick and easy. It's really one button, and I get everything I need. So that's where I want to get everyone today. Today, the purpose of this call, we're going to be able to save reports as a favorite, run them this quickly and this easily. And, we'll show you how to update those reports and edit them over time. So we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to go back to Run Report. And we're going to start running some reports. All right, we are going to start in step 1, and we're going to first run our report for all of ENFOS. And when I go through my step 2, we have all these different headers, and I'm going to briefly describe what's in each one of these sections. And they're very similar to the ENFOS module and submodule names. We have our admin module. This has a lot of our administrative reports, but it also has our additional information fields. So this is a really great section for those additional information fields. We have our compliance reports. We talked about each one of these reports in depth when we did our compliance expert webinar session. We have our laboratory and field data reports. We have our finance module reports. Because there are so many financial reports, we have financial planning as its own primary header section. We have a miscellaneous. Now this really captures these site module reports. And finally, we have just a summary, and really this is kind of like a financial summary report. I'm going to use one report today and kind of run it again and again and show the changes over time as we edit some of these fields. And I like the finance invoice report. I think it's straightforward, and everyone who is on the call can really, appreciate how to run the finance invoice report. So we're going to select finance, and report we're using today is invoice. As I selected the invoice report, my column on the right has been updated. And it gives me a preview of the columns that are going to be in this report. And as I scroll down, I'm actually going to I want to show everyone an example here. Some of our reports, we have a underlined field in this preview. And this underlined field gives us a description of what this column really is. So by using this, it gives you just a little bit more information. All right, finance invoice report. We are going to skip step 3 for right now because it is optional for this report. And we're going to go down to step 4. And we have a decision to make here for our report output. It's really straightforward. We run our report either in a new tab in ENFOS. We can download it. By default, this is downloading into a CSV format. Or we could use a template. And we're not going to talk too much about templates today, but a template is a Visual Basic macro template. We're going to run this report in the screen. And all I need to do is click Run Report. Now, I ran this report for all of my nodes. So this might take a little bit of time, but I wanted to show you the difference between kind of running this full report and then in step 1, toggling and using my location to run it just for this AOC. So I ran my report and I got what I was looking for. In ENFOS, in screen, your report will stop at 5,000 rows if there are greater than 5,000 rows in your report. If I download my report, I can download the full report. Of course, any Excel limitations on the total numbers of rows, which current Excel, it's like 1 million. It's not, it's something very large. So just keep in mind, if you have your result here, show 5,000. That means that's the max that we're going to show in screen. But in our in-screen report, we have lots of sections here. We've got our link. We've got a lot of columns. As I scroll through this report, you can see so much data and so much information within this report. A lot more than what we are seeing on the advanced search. Depending on the report, I may even be able to filter by my vendor company, as I can here. So I can select a specific vendor company and then only see the results for that company. Options in the screen, including printing. Now, what's nice about this print is it gives you a few more options than just saving it in Excel and printing it out. You can put headers and footers. You can decide, portrait, page numbers, etc. So it gives you a little bit more options. A lot of our users miss this print on their first go around with reporting. So keep that in mind. We can download this report. Again, downloads to CSV. We've talked about a template. And we have this Save to Favorite button. And that Save to Favorite is where we started today, right? We had a report that we had previously saved as a favorite. Now, I'm not ready to save this one as a favorite yet. I want to do a few more things. We're going to run this same exact report. We're going to run this probably 4 times. And all I'm going to change now is from all nodes in ENFOS to just at the AOC where I am in my hierarchy. So remember, as you're using ENFOS and using reporting more, I always recommend starting at a single AOC or project. That way I can run my report, I can verify easily that I'm getting the data I'm looking for, and then I can scale it up for maybe all of my sites. So same report, except we're just running it for this AOC. And now, instead of truncating at 5,000, I've got 193 results. Right? So I'm starting to filter down my output. I'm still not ready to save this as a favorite. And as I look at my notes, I realized I missed something when we first talked about the report output. And that's these column sorts. Again, something that you may have missed your first training through reporting. But we can use the column sorts in screen to sort by any of these fields. And it just gives me a quick way to look at the information. All right. We're going to close this report. Now, plenty of our clients leave their reports open and they start navigating, right? If they're looking into their invoices, they might leave that report open and use that report as a navigation tool. We're going to go into our step 3. So we're going to leave step 1 as it is, leave step 2 as it is. We're going to continue to run this invoice report. We're going to go into step 3. Now, we've got 2 optional fields, and as some of you know who have used reporting more, especially in the financial planning reports, this report criteria is going to be required. Even though it'll still say optional, when you try to run it, you're going to get a message. It's going to be in red, and it's going to tell you you have to use report criteria. So keep that in mind. And then also, you know, as you use ENFOS for longer and longer, you may not want to report out from, you know, older data. You may not care about your invoices from 2015 anymore. So this report criteria is a great way to filter out your output. Now, I say the report criteria filters your rows, right? You're no longer going to receive as many rows in your output. Sometimes you can filter your report criteria to actually show more rows, right? We're talking about invoice. This might show additional work breakdown structure or additional levels, which will actually result in more rows. And our report customization is going to filter the columns we see. Now, remember when we ran that invoice report, we had a lot of columns. Some of them were blank. Customization is going to give you only what you look for, only what you're looking for, and it allows you to reorder those columns. So we're going to take a look at both of these options right now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a report criteria from scratch. You can see I have a lot of saved criteria. And we get questions a lot on how can I share my saved criteria. And in ENFOS, we are always checking your user permissions and access. And this criteria can be shared by either saving it as a favorite and scheduling a report. We're going to look at that a little later. You can make that public and share it with other users. And sometimes it's just as simple as just taking a screenshot of your report criteria and sending it over to someone you'd like to share it with. So we are going to add some criteria. All we need to do is click this Add Report Criteria button. This takes me to a new page where I have another button for Add over here on the right. All right, and I'm going to set up some report criteria. And this is where the reporting gets very powerful. You'll see some similarities with this compared to when we looked at the advanced search. But I know we have a lot more options. And this report criteria is specific to each and every report in ENFOS, right? Because each report, there's different columns in it. So there's different ways to filter the data. So I've got some notes here on how I'm going to set up my report. I'm going to set up my proposal details to know Just a tip while we're on this page, if you want payment information in the invoice report, which I know is a common request, be sure to set this include proposal details to no. We have a little cross here letting us know, and we scroll down to the bottom, paid amount is shown only when proposal details are not included. So we tell you there, if you want to see your payment details, set this to no. But I wanted to remind everyone on the phone that feature is there. We're going to set our work breakdown structure level details to none. This means one row per invoice. Now, as I said before, this is one of those criteria that could actually give you more rows, right? Because it could give you more information. I only want to see invoices in a certain status, right? And here's our invoice statuses. And I only want to see what's been paid. That's all I care about. Anything else, I don't want to see it. So that's very simple. Of course, I could use as many checkboxes as I want. Since we have so much report criteria, we're not going to talk about each one of the fields. And for each report in ENFOS, as I mentioned, the report criteria is unique. So there's really no way for us to talk about every page. My best recommendation with you with the report criteria, run it at a project, play around with it until you get the results you're looking for, and then you'll be able to scale it up. And one of the few other fields here that are kind of new, so if you haven't done a report training in a while, are these relative date ranges, right? So we have each one of these dates. We could, of course, do a start-end date, but our goal here is to save this report as a favorite, so it's quick and easy to run again and again. So what I want to do is use a relative date range, and we have these drop-down menus above each one of the dates, and instead of saying today or this week, in the dates of, this week in July, we can set in a relative range, and so every week and every month and every year, these dates are going to be updated. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the approved date in ENFOS, and I'm going to use last year. Now, this will automatically populate my calendar fields with last year's dates. And, as we roll into 2019, this will automatically update to 2018 data, and so on. So really great with these relative date ranges. I cannot stress it enough. If you're doing financial reporting on some regular frequency, to use these date ranges because it makes running your reports easier. Another field that we've added to quite a few of our report criteria is this addition of the additional information fields. And your additional information fields are those custom fields set up client by client. And what you can do is pull those fields into a lot of these ENFOS reports. So we have some fields. These fields are managed in my site summary, but I want to see them and use them. Maybe I'm creating a pivot table from my ENFOS report data. I want to use this information, and I can select those fields and add it into my single report. So I'm going to add a field, and I know which one I want to add. Do a search. I want to make sure I'm getting the right one. Yeah. There we go. I'm going to add just one of the fields, but I, of course, could add many. All right. I'm going to click Add to add my report criteria. Report criteria always requires a name. I always give mine a name right before I click Save. So I'll call this last year's paid invoices. Again, this is just for me. I can edit or delete this over time. When you create a new criteria, ENFOS automatically selects it, right? So it's already pre-selected. All the information in our other steps has not changed. Just AOC 409, just invoices. And now we're going to look at just last year's paid invoices. Run that same report. Here we go. We're down to 13. So I'm filtering my data down more and more. I still have a lot of columns, right? And a lot of blank columns in here that I don't really want. So what we have is, in step 3, optional report customization. I'm going to, instead of adding report customization like we added report criteria, I'm going to edit existing report customization. You, of course, could do that with your existing report criteria also. The functionality and the steps are the same. So we are going to edit this report customization. All right. What I have done is used the checkboxes to select the columns I want to see in this report output. And, you know, I've only added some of the many columns. I've also dragged those columns up to the top. And that allows me to reorder my columns. So let's say I want to have my vendor before my ENFOS proposal number. I drag that column and I just put it right before. Let me do that again. I'm going to select an additional column I want to see in this report. Our purchase order number, let's say. So I use the checkbox to make a selection. I click and hold my purchase order number, and then I can drag it and put it wherever I want. So what this is doing is it's allowing me to really kind of define my output. Now, if you're just running a report once and downloading it into Excel and doing some work, it may not be worth it for you to go through all these steps. But again, if you're trying to save a report, create it as a favorite, so it's easy to run month after month, it's definitely worth, 5 minutes here to set this up once. It can be used again and again. And it's easy, and it saves you a little bit of time in your Excel work. At the bottom of this page, we have our sorting rows. And this just allows you to sort your rows by default. I decided to sort my rows by the paid date, and they're in ascending order. I can add additional sorts if I wanted to. And, again, all of this is optional. I'm going to click Save and make sure my selections are still there. Great. Same thing, we're just going to run our report in screen. We still have those 13 rows. We haven't made any edits there, but I can see my columns. And as I scroll over, I can see that I have a lot less columns, right? I don't have as much information as I had the first time around. So that's really great, and it gives me what I'm looking for. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this report as a favorite. So I can do that by clicking the Save to Favorites button, either in screen, and I'm going to call this my last year paid invoices. Okay. I could also do that from my Run Report page. Maybe I've run this a few times. Maybe I ran it at my AOC level. I know the report's good, and I'm ready to have it at all of ENFOS, my whole portfolio. I can save to a favorite right from this page. I don't even have to run my report. All ENFOS paid invoices last year. Click Save. The report has been added as my favorite. All right, and if I went over to my report favorites, my reports. Here they are, last year's paid invoices and all ENFOS paid invoices last year. And now I can run this report really quickly. Instead of making those 4 selections, I just click Run. And we'll run this report. Remember, this is for all of ENFOS, not just my single AOC. I know I'm going to have a lot here. Great, so I've truncated at 5,000, not surprising, but I've got a full report here, right? So it got us back to where we started, and now I can quickly and easily run these reports. So we've spent a lot of time talking about a finance report, right? And there's lots of finance reports, invoice, purchase order, etc. I want to talk about a little more functionality we have, and then I want to get into scheduling reports and talking about some of ENFOS employees, what we hear from our clients as some of their favorite reports and what are some of our favorite reports in the system. And then we'll finish up with talking about some advanced features within ENFOS. I'm going to toggle away from the finance reporting section, and I want to show everyone an example output of a map report in ENFOS. And not every report in ENFOS you can run a map report for, but there are some, and they come out really great and they look really cool. So I'm going to run this map report for all nodes, right, in our step one, all the nodes that I have access to. We are going to select a new report. Under miscellaneous, we are going to select site information. And this is really basic site information. This data pulls from my site summary screen. And at my site level, most of my information here is at my site level. So it pulls from this site level information. Site information, and as we scroll down, I've got my report criteria, I've got my customization, and now for this specific report, I have a map customization. And that's what we're going to look at now. All right, so we are going to look at a report map customization that I've already created. So instead of clicking Add New, I'm going to just click Edit. And what I'm trying to do is view my environmental status on the map. So I've got lots of options here as what to select, but I've selected environmental status. And I've said anything that's active, anything with the status active, I want to set as green. And anything that's not active, we're going to leave that site marker as black. So it'll quickly let me know, which sites are active, which ones are not. All right, I'm going to cancel this because I did not make any edits. All nodes, site information. We're not going to use criteria or customization. We're just going to use the map customization. And now in step 4, I have one more option, and that's that map report. We're going to click Run Report. And you can see the report output already looks drastically different. I do not have columns and rows, as we have seen in the other reports, but I actually have my map. And all of my sites are in the U.S. and maybe Canada. All my sites here are in the U.S. or Canada. And I have groups of sites. So I have some inactive sites already. That's this black site marker. When I click on that, I get a description of this point. And I have some green site markers, right? And when I click on this one, I get a description of this location. I also see some numbers, and that just lets me know that there is a large grouping of sites in a small area. So as I scroll in, it looks like we're going to be scrolling into Alabama and Georgia. As I scroll in, I get less of these groupings and more individual site locations. So it kind of lets me see where my sites are on my map. Again, I can click on that link and get my information. I can turn on certain fields in my result list. If I want to see my labels, that's showing me my site names right on the map. So this is a great project management tool, right? We want to look at our active sites in the Atlanta area. I can scroll in and I can see them with my site names geospatially located on the map. Now, ENFOS is pulling the latitude and longitude entered for this in the site summary information here. And we also have a way to geocode it based off of the address. So we hear a lot from our clients, the first time they run this, they find a site in the middle of the ocean or maybe somewhere across the world, like, I don't know, Morocco. What they do then is they can identify those sites and go back into the site summary information for that site, double check that geolocation coordinate. That's how ENFOS knows where to put these on the map. We also have, and this is not related to reporting, there are ways to slightly move your site marker. We know sometimes those geocoordinates, they have rounding and they get slightly off like they're across the street. You can move those sites. So if you do notice something on that, be sure to ask your ENFOS administrator. They can help you out with moving your site marker if you see some weird results here. So we've done a lot already. We have run reports. We've saved them as favorites. I want to talk about some of our other features here. So under My Reports, we've seen our favorites. We also have a reporting history. Just shows you what you've run recently. You know, we've all been in that spot where you're like, I ran this report last week. I just can't remember what it was. This is how you search it. Under portfolios are used for grouping sites. I can show an example a little later if we still have some time, but they are a way to filter maybe my sites or my active sites. Now, the report scheduler is a really powerful tool, and this is where you can set up ENFOS to email you reports automatically. And this is a separate permission, this report scheduler. So if you're not seeing this, ask your ENFOS admin. To create a scheduled job, you go to this report scheduler, open the scheduled job section, and click Create Job. You have to make sure your report is already set up as a favorite. That's the first step before you can do this. You give your job a name and an optional description. You choose if you're going to share this job or not, and if you're going to schedule this job to run automatically or not. Now, I will say most of our ENFOS admins suggest leaving that share job as no, just because it keeps the screen a little cleaner. You define if this report repeats or not. If it does repeat, you set that frequency. Now, if you're practicing in our test system or production, you're going to get these emails. So if you set a report to run every single day to 50 people, it's going to start running. So be sure to keep that in mind. Now, this run date is a great feature. This allows you in your frequency to define when you're going to get that first result. So let's say I'm going to repeat it every month, but I want to receive it on the 5th day of the month. I would set my start run date as the 5th day of the month. So now this report is going to run every month starting the 5th, right? And it's going to run on the 5th every month. That's a question we hear very frequently, so be sure to take a note on how to define which day it starts at. Finally, the delivery options. You can email this report to yourself. It comes as an automated email from ENFOS with an attachment. Here's where you can add one or many recipients. Now, these do not have to be ENFOS users, and this is the same as downloading a report and emailing it out to your email list. ENFOS is not checking the permissions, right? It's running the report based off of your permissions. So any of the employee project managers, be sure that what you're sharing, if it's with any of the consultants or people with limited permission, you can share with them. This field is brand new. We added this in maybe the spring release. Do not send report if blank, and this is really powerful. This basically allows you to set up a custom alert in ENFOS. So if you say, do not send the report if blank, yes. I've got an example. We have a client that wanted to receive a notification if an invoice was added to a specific expense type, because those invoices were not supposed to be added through ENFOS. So they wanted a report. If an invoice came in for that expense type, they would receive an email report. If not, they would not get anything from ENFOS. So it's a way to do basically a custom alert. File type. Now, ENFOS defaults to CSV, but here you can define Excel. If you have Excel, it also allows you to add multiple favorite reports in a single Excel workbook, right? So you can have your invoice report by vendor in an Excel workbook and have each tab as a different vendor company. You can zip that file or not, depending on the size. That's your call. And then finally, at the last step, you add one or many report favorites. Here's maybe I want all my invoices paid from last year and my site list. I can click done. I've got that saved. And now I can see this report, save it, and your report's scheduled. Last year's paid invoices, here it is. I can delete it or edit it at any point, as well as run it within the screen. Now this report is going to run automatically overnight. I think they go out maybe around 2 a.m. Central Time. But you will, when you log into your Outlook in the morning, you're going to get that report output you set up. All right, a few more items here. Snapshots. We have a way to save reports as a snapshot where you can just save the report just as you would from your, as you would if you downloaded a report and saved it on your own computer. Now let's talk about some of ENFOS's favorite reports and the reports we're kind of always suggesting to our clients. Now I'm not going to have time to run through each one of these reports, but I wanted to give you guys a kind of a quick summary of some of our favorites. So we love the financial planning detail report. It's a great report to show your starting balance, purchase order amount, spend, final balance, and then your planned amount for all the out years. We also love the financial reserve report. This report's great because it allows you to define a timeline. So you can say, well, I want to know what my starting and ending balance was for Q1 and all my spend in Q1. That's this financial reserve report. You would use just the report criteria to define what that period is, and ENFOS tells you what the system looked like during that time. We also have the plan balance detail report. This one I am going to run with some report criteria. What's amazing about this report is it gives you kind of a walkthrough. We really recommend running this one at a single AOC. But it says from the beginning of my time frame, my starting balance, each invoice throughout that timeline, and then my final balance. So it gives me a walkthrough. If I had a plan adjustment or anything else that would be shown here, it gives me a walkthrough with time and date stamps of what has happened at this AOC. Let's go over to the finance module. We love the invoice report. We talked about it. There's so much detail in that invoice report. We also love the cost summary by network or cost summary by WBS report. This report allows you to see the purchase order amount, the approved invoice amount. It does not have an open amount in it, but it's a simple Excel math calculation if you downloaded the report and did it. So, and you can do this by your work breakdown structure. So those are some of our personal favorite reports. I went out to our ENFOS employees and I kind of quizzed them on their favorites, and this is what I got back. All right, we are going to open it up for questions shortly, but I'm going to talk a bit about some of these additional features. We do have portfolios in ENFOS. Now these portfolios can be set up, but we can run any report on some of our predetermined portfolios. So now when I run this report, instead of all nodes or just at my current node, I'm just going to run it on my legacy active sites, right? So it gives me a way to filter down how I'm going to get those report results. A lot of you guys, a lot of our clients, project managers, employee users, you already have a portfolio set up for your site. We talked about Excel Visual Basic macro templates. ENFOS can write these, or these can be done by someone internally. But what this does is it takes ENFOS raw data and it creates an output in a format predefined. So here's an example of a work order Excel template. which takes those raw data rows from ENFOS and just kind of formats it and makes it look a little better. It does some of these totaling, bolding, things that you guys do to automatically create your output. ENFOS has a cost associated with developing these, but again, you probably have someone within your own company that knows Visual Basic, and we can always provide you the tools with how to create these. We talked about user permissions quite a bit. Admins expect some questions on these settings. All of our reports are downloadable. Some of our reports download in the same format that's required to import. One example there is our financial planning, I think this one's pretty close, plan export report. And this actually downloads your planning data in the same format required for importing. You might have some options to add some additional fields, but that makes it really simple to do importing in bulk. All right, and then for those of you who attended our conference, you know that we had been giving demos of our BI or business intelligence functionality. And that was not in the scope for today's meeting, but I wanted to give everyone an update. We are doing beta testing with a handful of customers, and we don't have an end date for our beta testing scheduled yet. And we do have a planned stage rollout for this functionality in production. And this first rollout is going to include some ENFOS industry standard dashboards for all customers, which would include permissions and access checks. That means your BI dashboards are going to be built out for you and ready to go. We're expecting this rollout later this year or very early for next year. And keep your eyes out for more examples and feedback from ENFOS. Here's just a quick example of a BI dashboard that we have built out and we're kind of testing right now. So instead of seeing our report output in columns and rows, we're seeing it in charts and graphs. All right, Chris, I'm going to hand this over to you, and we are going to start the question and answer session.
Yeah, sure. So before we get to Q&A, I just want to mention we'll be including in our follow-up email a very short survey for ENFOS users where you can tell us a bit about your experience using the ENFOS app. And yeah, we want to know. We always are trying to make a better experience for you. So you'll also be able to find this video on our YouTube page along with past ENFOS webinars. And yeah, we'll also be including it within the ENFOS app tutorials video section.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Cool.
All right, George, any questions that we should discuss with the group?
Yeah, we had a question. Could you show how to add the additional information fields to a report?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, of course, our own reports just for additional information fields. So if you want to report out on just those fields, under admin, we have 3 reports, straight up additional information. But if you want to add those pre-set up additional information fields to existing reports, I think let's maybe use the financial reserve report this time. You select your report. Now it's not available in every single report, but we're building it out more and more. You click to add report criteria in step 3. Be sure to add again. And it's typically at the bottom of the page. And there's a section called additional information fields. And you have that add field button. And here's where you can select one or many of the fields, and of course you can search. You can select those fields to your report, and then these 4 fields that I selected, they're going to be thrown into my report at the end. So it's a great way to add kind of custom filtered fields. And it's a great way for you guys to brainstorm how to use additional information more. If you want to add fields to existing ENFOS reports, can you add that data in as additional information and then load it into the report? Think about it. It might be a good way to manage your additional information. Okay.
Another question. What do we do if we think a report is missing an important column?
Yeah, great note. I would say first check your report criteria. So let's go back to the invoice report. When I was running it, I didn't include my work breakdown structure. I didn't include my phase, activity, element, etc. So I could say my invoice report is missing my activity and my phase. In the report criteria, I can add that in. So I would say first check that report criteria that there's not some options there. Right? We have WBS codes, components, task names. We have a lot of fields in these reports. Now, if a column is truly missing to a report, send that over to your ENFOS admin. They might have some suggestions, and if not, they can always send a formal request over to ENFOS to add that column in, and then we can queue that up and prioritize it. Great questions. You know, one thing with the report criteria, a lot of people miss the date output ranges. So let me show that in the financial planning detail report, one of our favorite reports. We'll hear, you know, ENFOS is reporting this out by year, and I just wish ENFOS could do it by quarter. Same thing in the report criteria. We have some fields, and this is where you can define that. Display current year actual by, right? It's defaulting to full year. Look, I could change that to month. So now I'm seeing my actuals or my invoice, my spend, by month instead of by year. So that one toggle, that one field can make a really big difference in your report output. Report criteria is so strong, and again, that's why I always recommend running it down at an AOC or a project level first, getting it as perfect as you can, and then scaling it up.
Got another question here. Can I edit a favorite report?
Yeah, great question. Okay. My reports. I was doing this a lot as I prepped for this call today. So I've got my all ENFOS paid invoices last year, and I want to edit it. Now, of course, I could always delete it and start fresh, but that takes a little bit of work. What's nice about this report is I've defined the criteria and the customization. So all I need to do is edit either the criteria or customization, and it will automatically update my report favorite. Now, good or bad, right? If you're using the same criteria for multiple reports and you edit it, you might forget that it updates your favorites. So keep in mind we can update that. So let's update our criteria. All we need to do is go to our Run Report page. We're going to select our Finance Invoice Report and find that criteria with the same name. I click Edit, and maybe I don't want to, maybe I want the same report, but I want to edit something. Maybe instead of last year, I want to do this year. So I edit my report criteria. I click Modify and Save. And now my report favorite has been updated. So that report favorite is, I don't need to click Save as a favorite. I don't need to do anything in my report favorites page. It's automatically updated. Again, that's another reason why we don't share report criteria, because if other users had access to it and they changed it, it could edit and change your output. So that's why it's really anchored to your own account.
Good question here from a user in Europe. They don't use comma-separated values. Can they change their delimiter? Yeah,
great question. All right, so I'm going to go to my user preferences. And really this applies just for our European clients. But in your own user preferences, we've got a field. And George, it's under miscellaneous. CSV delimiter. So US and Canada, using Excel, it's going to default to comma-separated value. But in Europe, we know sometimes it's a semicolon separated value. Here's where you define that delimiter. So instead of a comma, ENFOS is now going to search for a semicolon. When you download your reports, it's going to use that instead, and it's going to make your report outputs cleaner and look better. be sure to click Save at the bottom of this page too. And, you know, as we're on here and we're talking about Europe, you can always update your date format too. All right, we are at time. So I'm going to check with George if there's any other questions, but otherwise we really appreciate everyone attending today, and your feedback is as always welcome. Thanks.